Welcome back to part 4 of the Myriad Playout training course. In this video, we're going to be looking at Myriad Schedule, what it is and what it does, song and link categories, rules in Myriad Schedule, simple clocks, advanced clocks, clock assignments, and finally, how to schedule into the log.
Myriad release 5.25 brought some major changes to Myriad Schedule and the addition of Myriad Schedule Plus. This video has now been updated to reflect the new features and changes brought about in 5.25. Wherever the system has changed, we've updated the video and we'll put a banner on screen to indicate that the video has been updated. A few of the other areas that are not directly affected by the update will remain in the original format, but that does mean that some of the screenshots or tabs may be in a slightly different position, but the video should still show you all the information you need.
What is Myriad Schedule and why do we need it? Myriad Schedule is a music and link scheduling system built directly into Myriad. Its job is to build content to be used by the log based on clocks that you've created, which may consist of just simple instructions about which music to include, or maybe far more complex in their structure. Myriad Schedule replaces AutoTrack or AutoTrack Pro, as well as third-party systems such as Selector, although you can use a combination of Myriad Schedule and other scheduling systems should your needs require. In order to use Myriad Schedule to generate a schedule for your log, you could need 4 things. Number 1, you need music and link database. This will include categories to allow you to categorize both the music and the links or jingles. Luckily, we already have that built in the form of the media wall. Secondly, we're going to need some rules. We need to tell the system how long it should be before a song is repeated or an artist is repeated. And we need to be able to specify that either per category or individually in clocks. That brings us on to number 3, clocks. Clocks are kind of structures for automated or live shows. Think of them like a plan for a show. It may include what type of music to include in the hour, as well as any additional content such as specific items, hardware events, timing information, etc. Finally, you have to assign the clocks to hours of the week. This is called the schedule or the clock assignment grid.
The Myriad 5.25 update also introduced Schedule Plus, which is a new optional module which extends the capabilities of Myriad Schedule, adding extra features such as genders, eras and types, as well as some additional rules and tools. Any features that are exclusive to Myriad Schedule Plus will be indicated on screen.
First, let's talk about music and link categories. These are key for using Myriad Schedule because this is the way that you organize the music on your system. So before you start adding content, it's a good idea to work out what categories you're going to use and then make those categories in Myriad Playout so that as you add content, you can put songs and links into the correct categories from the very beginning. To edit or adjust the categories you have for songs and links, go to the Settings menu, Database Settings, and Categories and Attributes.
The Categories and Attributes window allows you to set the categories and attributes for songs, links, adverts, and news items. Here we can see we're on the Songs tab, and you can see the different types of category we have. We have category names, type names, gender names, era names, and tag names. Now, you will only see types, genders, and eras if you've got the optional Myriad Schedule Plus upgrade. Otherwise, you'll just see category names and tag names. Here you can see we are on the category names. To switch to one of the other attributes, you can just click on them. And you can see the list of existing categories here. So if I want to add a new category, just click on the Add New Category button. And you can see it's been added to the bottom here. Give it a new title. And hit enter, and your category is done. You can also see that you can edit existing categories by clicking on them and typing a new title in. You can also see this column here shows you how many items you currently have within those existing categories. The rules column allows you to access the category rules for that particular category. So if I click on the pop one here, you will see it's giving us the specific category rules for that. There'll be more on this later when we actually look at rules, but this is where you would set the rules for this specific category. The import alias column allows you to set import aliases for metadata when the system is importing audio files. So the way this works is currently in the pop category here, we have a series of import aliases. So if I click on that, you can see the list of import aliases. What this means is when Myriad imports a audio file, it will check the metadata for the genre category. And if it finds anything that's listed in the alias list here, it will route it into the pop generic category. So let's say we wanted to add a new alias of Britpop and then hit enter, then it's been added in there. So then from now on, anything that comes in with that alias will be routed into the pop category. You can also set the default color for a category. You can choose to do either a standard color or an advanced color. Finally, you can erase a category, but you can only do that when a category is empty. So if you try to delete the pop category, it wouldn't allow you to do that because there's content in here. We can see our current category currently has a count of 0, so we could remove that one if we wished. Let's have a quick look at some of the other attributes as well. Types are a Schedule Plus feature and are usually considered to be a sub-classification. So here you can see I've got 2 types, classic and modern. You can add as many types as you wish, and you add them in the same way just by clicking on the Add Type. You can change the names, you can set the colors, and you can remove them. Same thing for genders. Here you can see I've got male, female, and group. You can add as many genders as you wish. And same for eras. You can see I've got decades in here for my eras. So just as a reminder, types, genders and eras are only available for Schedule Plus upgrade customers. Otherwise you would normally just see category names and tag names in here. So let's have a look at tag names next. Now tags are available across all Myriad Schedule, so whether you have Myriad Schedule Plus or Myriad Schedule Standard, and they should be considered to be a kind of way of collecting content of a similar type or with similar attributes together. So you can see I've got some tags here, which is Liam's stuff and Gareth's stuff, but a more common name use for types might be, let's call one love, and let's add another one which is our opener, and let's add a final one of let's call this one Station Classic. And so what we would do is we can actually then tag songs that have these attributes in them, and then in the clock we can actually specify tags to be used for positions within the clock. So for example, if you wanted to create a hour that is love music but is actually being picked from several different categories, you could do that by tagging a whole bunch of songs as love songs, creating a clock which is using a mixture of pop and rock and dance, or whatever categories you're using, but in forcing all of the songs in that hour to have the love tag. So you can use tags as a very useful way of filtering the content that you want inside of clocks or to be scheduled. Just before we move off this screen, I mentioned a couple of other things. We've got a button here for import category styles and etc. from AutoTrack SE. So if you're running AutoTrack SE and you are then upgrading to Myriad Schedule or Myriad Schedule Plus, you can click on this button to just simply import all of your categories, styles, attributes and everything from AutoTrack. There's also the option in Myriad 5.25 onwards to actually have separate categories, tags, types, genders and eras per station, in which case obviously you can edit these separately for each of the stations that you are logged into. Once you do that, then on the song edit windows where you set the categories, you actually have to choose which station you are editing at that time, so that you can actually set the categories, attributes, tags, etc. differently in different stations. If I move on to the links window here, you can see I've got some categories. I've also got types, genders, eras, because Myriad Schedule Plus is enabled here, and tags as well, so you can have link tags. Primarily, you're probably only going to have link categories and tags. And again, exactly the same as with songs, you can add a new one, you can set the rules, and you can set the import aliases, although that's far less relevant for links. And finally, you can set the category colors for those links. There's also adverts where you can do the same thing, so you can add in advert categories, and there's also news categories. Now, both adverts and news aren't particularly used in Myriad at this moment in time, but will be used in future releases, so feel free to populate them as required. And that is it for the categories and attributes. Next, we need to look at how we actually assign these to songs and links on the system. If we want to set the attributes for a song, for example, the easiest way to do that is using the Myriad Edit screen. So select the song you want to edit and click on the Edit button on the ribbon, or you can also right-click and choose Edit from the right-click menu. This will open up the Myriad Edit screen. Now, in terms of music scheduling categories and item types, there is a top-level there's a top-level indication up on in the General tab here, which allows you to select the item type, in this case a song, and then the primary category, in this case pop. However, if you are running multiple different categories for multiple stations, then this section is disabled in favor of the categorization tab, which is here. And this allows you to set the primary category, but also a secondary category, so that a song can exist in more than one category, a primary and a secondary. If you have Myriad Schedule Plus enabled, you can also set the types, the genders, and the eras from this category as well. And if you are running multiple categorizations per station, there'll be an extra selection on this window which allows you to select which station you're working on. So you can actually set the categories for multiple different stations by simply clicking on each station and then setting the category you want to use for each one of those stations. Finally, on here we have the tags, which allow us to choose which tags we want. So for example, if we wanted to make this one a love song and an hour opener, we can just click on the tags. You can click on as many tags for a song as you wish. Also, you may wish to set some restrictions in place. Now, this allows Myriad Schedule to decide when a song can and can't be played. So the first thing is the top level tick box for should we allow this song to be played full stop. If this is unticked, then this song will not appear in the schedule, and it will also not appear on the library tab by default, although you can turn on or turn off the filtering so that it includes all songs regardless of whether they are available to schedule or not. So tick this to allow this item to be scheduled by Myriad Schedule. And then we have a grid here which allows us to pick the days that and hours that Myriad is allowed to use this song. So this particular song is currently allowed to be scheduled up until 7 a.m. But from 7 a.m. through till 6 p.m. this song is not available for scheduling. That may be because it's got content in that you want to exclude from your daytime, or maybe you just don't want it to play on certain days. To flick whether a song or a link is able to be scheduled in a specific hour of the week, you just change it from either a green block, which means it can be scheduled, to a red block, which means it can't. And you can select by dragging and dropping and creating the dispersal pattern that you need. You can also save and load presets. So let's say we wanted to have one that we wanted to have, so a song wouldn't play on Mondays for some reason. So here I've got it, I've masked off all of Monday, and I'm going to save this as a preset. So I'm going to call this one Monday and hit save, hit OK. So then let's say I had another song, it was all green. So if I wanted to apply that Monday preset, I would drop this down, choose the preset I want, and click on the load button, and it would load in the preset. So you can set up presets to use commonly used hour restrictions if you need to. And when you're happy, you click on the save button, or you can close the window and that will save it. Let's take a quick look at how that would work with a link as well. So going to click on close, go to the jingle section. Here I've got a link here. I'm going to click on edit, and we'll see how this differs. So we can see currently this is down as a basic item. It doesn't want to be a basic item. We want this one to be a link. So I'm going to click on a link. That then enables the categorization and the restriction tabs, because a basic item is an item that can't be scheduled. So of course none of this is relevant until we change it to be a song or some other schedulable item. So in this case, it's a link. I can either go into my categorization tab and choose my primary. So I'm going to put this in as a station ID, but I'm also going to put it in as a promo, as a secondary category. So this link now exists in both the station ID and the promo category. I haven't set up any tags or any Schedule Plus elements here for links. So once again, if I'm happy with this, I can just click on the close button and say, do you want to save it? And I can say yes, and that's done. Now, the final thing I'm just going to mention about items, which applies to both songs and links, is in the other tab, you can also set start date, end dates, and deletion dates. So a start date means that this item will not be available for schedule until after the start date. And the end date doesn't means obviously after that date it won't be available for schedule. It can also be applied so that it's not available to play in the log after an end date as well. And you can also set a delete date, which Myriad can also be set now to automatically delete expired items. So if this was a link or a promo that was very time specific, you could set a start date, an end date, and also a deletion date, after which the system would automatically delete that item. So that's how you set categorization, types, genders, eras, and tags for songs and links. But before we move on, I just want to have a quick look at a media item I just spotted on my media wall, which is incorrectly listing artists as two artists with an ampersand or an and between them, which is fine for a human reading it, but Myriad will not be able to tell that's two separate artists. So I'm going to just bring up a different media item and show you how to fix that so that Myriad Schedule will use that correctly.
There's one other thing we need to fix on this media item before it is ready for scheduling. You'll notice that the first artist is currently down as the Chainsmokers featuring Daya. The problem is that Myriad Schedule will see this as an artist called the Chainsmokers featuring Daya and will not apply any artist rules to either the Chainsmokers or Daya. It's easy to fix this. Click on the exclamation button here, click yes, and you can see that Myriad has now created two artists. Firstly, the Chainsmokers, secondly, Daya. And it's created a by field, the Chainsmokers featuring Daya. So if we close this, on the media wall it looks exactly the same. But now Myriad knows that there's actually two artists on this song.
Sometimes you have multiple songs or links that you need to change the categorization or other attributes for en masse. You can do that using the mass changer. To access this, go to the reports menu and then do media reports. We covered media reports in the audio wall or media wall section in video 1. So we'll repeat the process here. Let's say we wanted to see a list of all of the media items we had between media ID 10,000 and 10,000 and 10. So here we can see there's our songs. Now we can highlight them individually using Control or Shift, just like any other Windows application. Or if we do Control A, that will select all of them. So let's say we wanted to mass change these all into a different category. You can see that some of them are uncategorized, some of them are in pop, one of them is in dance. So let's say we want to put these all in a new category. Click on the mass changer. Be careful because it's right next to mass delete. If you do hit mass delete, it doesn't automatically delete. It will ask you more than once whether you're sure, but this time we want to use the mass changer. Here we have the mass changer window. This allows you to change anything on the media items, so you can do everything from title through to categorization, restrictions, notes, copyright details, and other information. But we're primarily interested in changing the category here as we are looking with Myriad Schedule. So first thing we need to do is we need to choose the item type as song, because if we don't choose song, then Myriad doesn't know which categories to load into there. So if we don't select song, then these options are not available. Once you've selected song, you can then choose your primary or your secondary category. So let's set our primary category here to be rock, and we'll also set a secondary category of A-list. We could also, if we had Myriad Schedule Plus enabled, we can also mass set the type, the gender, and the era. And regardless of whether we're using Myriad Schedule Plus or Myriad Schedule Standard, we can mass apply tags to those songs as well. So let's make them all love songs as well. So add the selected tags, click love songs, and that's done. So to start the mass change, click on the Start Mass Change Media Item button. It'll say, are you sure you want to mass change these? We'll say yes. And as you can see, it goes through and does that. It says it's changed 11 items. And here we can see that the items we selected are now all in the rock category. And we can also see their secondary category is A-list. And we can also see that they all now have the love song tag. So you can rapidly change categorization or any attributes on your system using the mass changer. Remember, it works applies to songs, basic media items, links, or anything else on the system.
With the songs and link category sorted, the next thing to think about, step 2, was rules. The important thing with rules is to think about the hierarchy of rules in Myriad Schedule. There are 3 levels of rules. There is station rules, which are applied as a broad stroke across all categories, and those are set in the station database settings. Then there are category rules, which override station rules, and those are applied on a per category basis. So for example, you may say, I do not want to repeat the same pop song within 4 hours, but I do not want to repeat the same jazz song within 6 hours. Finally, there are clock rules, which are similar to category rules, except for they apply to a category only in the clock where they are being used. So let's have a look at how we set them. First, let's take a look at the station rules. They're station-wide, so they need to be in Settings, Database Settings, Database Settings. And because they're applied on a per station basis, you have to go to the Stations tab and then select the station you want to work on. Once here, click on the Scheduler tab, and the default schedule rules are displayed here. Currently, we have a title separation rule of 2 hours. This means that as a general rule, unless overridden by either a category rule or a clock rule, the same song will not be repeated within 2 hours. Below that, we can also see that we have an artist restriction of 1 hour, which means the same thing except for applied to artists. Finally, we have a station rule that is protecting links. That's currently set to 0, which means we're not applying any station-wide link scheduling rules. Over on the right, you can see that each of those 3 options also has a tick box for this rule can be broken if required. What that means is, in general, Myriad will try and not play the same song within 2 hours. However, if the option is play a song repeated within 2 hours or not play a song at all, the system will break the rule. If, however, I untick that box, then Myriad will never be able to play the same song within 2 hours. It doesn't stop a presenter from doing it, but it does mean that Myriad will never do it itself. Once you're happy with these station rules, click on OK to save them. With the station rules set, it's time to look at some category level rules. These will override the station rules and allow you to set different title and artist separations for songs and links in different categories. To set them, click on the Settings menu, Database Settings, Categories and Attributes. We saw this window just a few moments ago when we were setting up categories. The rules column allows you to set the rules for each category. So let's have a look at the rules being applied to the pop category. Click on the rules button and you get a simple version of the same rules we just saw in the station rules section. So at the moment we're using the station rules as the default rules. However, if we want to override the rules for this specific category, select use these specifics and then change the timing in here. So if I want to change this to be 4 hours, I can do so. You can go through and set rules for every category. As you can see, now that we have a special override rule set for pop, it goes green to warn us that something is different about that category. Finally, we want to set some clock rules, which are rules that apply to a specific category, but only within a specific clock. Now, we haven't covered clocks yet because that's step 3, so we're going to jump forward a tiny bit here, but don't worry, we'll be covering this in more detail in just a few moments. To access the clocks, go to the Station menu and then select Myriad Schedule. On the left-hand side, we have a list of clocks available. Let's have a look in the pop clock. Here we see a pop clock. It is what's called a simple clock, and as I said, we'll cover this in a few seconds. However, the bit we're interested in here is the rules section. We can alter the rules for a category by clicking on the button, and we have the same options we had a few seconds ago within the category rules. However, these will only apply for songs in this category whenever this clock is in use. You also have the same options available for links.
In Myriad, the log is used to provide a list of content to play for any given hour of the week. The log is divided up into individual hours, and each hour is based on a clock. A clock is a kind of plan for the hour that will be produced. So here we can see the 11 o'clock hour has a jingle and then some songs, then an advert break which hasn't been filled yet. This didn't start off with this particular song, Anastasia, scheduled. It started off with a clock that simply said an A-list song should be played first, followed by a pop song, then an advert break, then a gold song, then a jingle. So to create the schedule for your station, you're going to need to create a number of clocks, each clock representing an hour of your weekly output. However, there's no need to create a clock for every single hour because each clock is only a plan or a framework for a show. It means that you can repeat clocks multiple times through the week, and it will result in the same overall mix of music and structure for shows, but the actual content will be changed on an hour by hour basis. Clocks are also then assigned to specific hours in the week using the clock assignment grid. So in this section we're going to take a look at building clocks and also how to assign them to the clock assignment grid. So let's jump in. Myriad Schedule actually has two different types of clock available. There are simple clocks and advanced clocks. Simple clocks are generally used for automation and are really easy and quick to set up, but don't give you a great deal of control over the content or structure of the log that will be generated via those clocks. Advanced clocks give you a lot more control over the structure and the content, but take a little bit more to set up. So we're going to have a look at both types of clocks in this section, starting with the simple clocks. So to access Myriad Schedule, go to Station and Myriad Schedule, and this will open the Myriad Schedule window. And inside the Myriad Schedule window here, you can see that we have, on the left hand side, we have our list of existing clocks and the ability to add new clocks as well as edit clocks. You could also import and export clocks from here, and you can also right click and edit, copy, export or delete clocks. Over on the right hand side we have the clock assignment grid, which is where we actually assign clocks to specific hours within the week. So you can see you've got a grid with 24 hours a day for 7 days a week, and you can see exactly which clocks are being assigned for those particular hours. So we can see at 10 a.m. we're using the advert examples clock, but at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday we're using the speech clock. We'll come back to this later. First of all, we want to look at some clocks. So there are two different types of clock in Myriad. As I mentioned earlier, there are simple clock and advanced clocks, and you can tell what type of clock a clock is here by the icon. So this here general one is a simple clock. You can see the icon is 3 sort of sliders, which will make sense in a second, whereas this my advanced clock is an advanced clock. You can see it's got a little music sign on it to indicate that it's an advanced clock. So first of all, let's have a look at this general one, which is a simple clock. So simple clocks are exactly as they say. They are, you don't specify exactly what you want within the hour, more you set some goals for what you want the system to do. So we have the top section, the general section allows you to define the basics for the clock. So the first thing you do is give it a clock name, in this case general. Then the clock type is the next option, which is allows you to switch between a simple clock and an advanced clock. And you can actually convert between them by just clicking on the button. So if I wanted to take this general simple clock and convert it to an advanced clock, I could click on the advanced clock. But for now we want to stick with simple clock, so we'll just leave that as is. Next is the schedule log mode. So you've got 2 options here. You've got either live assist or auto fade, and this will tell Myriad how it should use this particular clock in the log. Auto fade is used for unattended automation, and live assist should be used for any clocks that are actually going to have presenters that need to interact with the system. I'm going to switch this one to be an auto fade clock because I want to use this one overnight. Next we have the ability to start and end this simple clock with a specific media item. So let's say I had a jingle or a promo that I desperately wanted to play at the beginning of each one of these hours that are built from this clock. I would click on start with this media item, and I just simply type in the media item I wanted. So let's say media item number 10 was the one I wanted to play at the beginning, then that's fine, I could put that in. And I can do the same thing with finish with. So if I really wanted to finish with media item number 11, I could do so. Now remember that media items don't have to be single items, they can be lists or rotations. So this could actually be a sequence of items that is being generated via a list media item. You can also choose to add an auto hook to the beginning of the hour. An auto hook is a promo for what's coming up in this hour. So if we click on the edit, we'll be able to see the settings for this. We've got some options here. A typical auto hook will start with a promo or some type of introduction jingle. It may be a jingle that says coming up this hour, something like that. So the first thing you do is set the media item that you want to play there. So you can click on browse and choose. So I'm going to say choose this number 1, which says in the next 30 minutes. Then you can choose a media item to play between the hooks. So when Myriad generates an auto hook, it will look through the hour, find the appropriate number of songs that have hooks set, and then extract the hooks and create a promo out of those hooks. So you have to have set the hooks on the media items in the first place, but once you've set the hooks on a song, then auto hook can use them to build dynamic promos in the log. So if I wanted to, I could specify a piece of media to play in between each one. That may be a burst of static, or I'm going to choose the separator one here, which just sort of says hot FM. So you can choose the media item you want there. And then similarly, we can specify a media item to play at the end of the hook. So this will be the kind of out of your promo. So I'm going to choose this mix sweeper as my out promo. Next we say how many hooks we should play. So this is how many songs should we try and play or include in our auto hook. In this case it's set to 3, and also then we can set the numbers ahead to look. So currently it's set to 1 hour, so this auto hook will only select songs from the current hour that have hooks set, whereas if I set this to be next 2 hours, for example, it would actually look ahead 2 hours. So if my first promo said coming up on the breakfast show today, I could then say I want to choose 5 songs from the next 2 hours. And the way that the system selects it is actually set here in the item selection drop down. So we can choose next X, in which case it will find the next X songs from wherever the auto hook is in the log that have hooks set, and use those. Or we could use random X, in which case in this particular setup here it's going to pick 5 songs from the next 2 hours randomly and include them in the auto hook. Finally, you can choose next X items reversed, which is the same as next X, but it plays them in reverse order. So the one that plays last is actually the one that's going to play most soon. So often that's really good for if you want to play them in reverse order. Finally, you can set a media item to play if there are no items, no songs found in the hour that have hooks. In that scenario, you can set a alternate promo to play in here. Okay, so I'm just going to put this back to be 3 from the next hour, random. So now the auto hook will play at the beginning of the hour of any hour that uses this clock or this simple clock as the basis. Finally, I'm going to set a minimum duration. So this is usually set to 1 hour, but of course you could have it longer or shorter if you needed. So this is telling the system to pick content and fill 1 hour, play an auto hook at the beginning, and schedule it in auto fade mode. So the next thing we need to do is actually use the song category goals and the link category goal tabs to actually set what content we want to include within this simple clock. And the way this works is you can see we've got a list of all of the categories we currently have on our system, and we also have an index of how many songs are within each of those categories. So we can see we've got 33 songs in our A list currently and 194 in our pop, but we currently don't have any in our indie category. So we probably want to avoid asking the system to pick indie music in this hour because we don't have any yet. The way that the system works then is you just, for each category, you have a weighting slider which allows you to set the relative weighting to the other categories. So when you're visualizing this, it's often useful to think about it as percentages, but actually it's not a percentage. They don't all have to add up to 100. But let's take the simplest possible setting where I might say I want to set these all to 0, set my pop to 70, and set my gold to 30. So now 70% of the content will be pop, 30% will be gold. And then you could then say, well, I'm going to allow a little bit of dance music and a tiny bit of rock, and also let's chuck in a couple of A-list songs here and there as well. So as you can see, they no longer add up to 100, but we can still see that the bulk of the content is going to come from the pop category, with gold being the next most used category, then A-list, dance, and a tiny bit of rock here and there. So you can set these either by dragging the sliders, or you can type a value into there. You can also see we've got a rules section here. Now we covered this briefly previously. We'll just go through it again very, very quickly. For each category, you can override the category rules or the station rules. So currently you can see that the pop category is in green, which means that there is an override in place here. So if I click on that, we can see that we are overriding some of the rules inside here. So this will only apply for pop category songs when used in this clock. Any that are in grey just mean it's going to revert back to either the category rules or the station rules. If we want to zero all these out, so if we've got lots of complex settings in here and we want to put them all to 0 and then make it very simple, which I'll show you how to do in a second to create an indie song or a specific category clock, you would use that. We should also take a look at the link category goals, because it's exactly the same thing here. On here, the first option we have is automatically choose a link every X songs. So here you can say how frequently to play a link. So if I wanted to play 2 songs and then a link throughout my simple clock, I just set this to be 2. And just as with the song categories, you then say which category of content should be included. So I'm going to change this to play mostly station IDs, but occasionally play a sweeper. And when you're happy with your simple clock, you just click on OK, and that will save the simple clock in. There it is in there. So let's see how easy it is to create a simple clock for a specific category. I'm going to click on Add New Clock. I'm going to call this one Dance. Make sure it is a simple clock. I'm going to have an auto fade one. I'm not going to tell it to play an auto hook on this one, but I am going to tell it to play a specific jingle. So I'm going to play specific jingle number 7 at the beginning, and I've got it set to 1 hour. And here you can see I've got an equal weighting on a whole bunch of categories that I have content in. So I'm going to zero those all out, because what I want to do is create a dance only hour. So I'm just going to take this, I'm going to put it up there. Now I've only got 50 dance songs in here, so in order for this to work, I'm also going to override the rules and say, like, I'd prefer you to follow the rules, but if you need to break some of these rules, you can do, because I'd rather break the rules than have unscheduled dance tracks when I'm using this clock. But that's usually you wouldn't do that in a real station. You would just have more than 50 dance songs if you wanted to have dance music. Mustn't forget to also check the link category goals, check I've got that set correctly. So I don't want any promos, I don't want any sweepers, I just want it to play station IDs. And that's it now. If you click on OK, you can see that the dance clock has been added here, and so that's ready to be assigned to an hour of the week that I want to assign it to. So that's a simple clock. Next we need to look at how we can get a lot more detail into that clock and control the structure via an advanced clock.
Before we jump into an advanced clock, let's just quickly review by what we mean by a clock in general. Traditional radio clocks are used to plan shows. They're often in the form of a table or even a pie chart, showing exactly what's going to occur in any given show. So a typical clock might say, start with a jingle, then play 2 songs, then play the advert break, then go back to a jingle, and then play another song. And you can add extra layers of detail, such as the first 2 songs must be pop songs, followed by a rock song, followed by a dance song. Now that we know what a clock is, let's go back to advanced clocks. To add an advanced clock, go back to the clock section and choose Add New Clock. Every clock that you add starts life as a simple clock, so we'll have some song category goals and link category goals preset. To create an advanced clock, click on the Advanced Clock button. You'll be asked whether you want to use the current settings in the song category goals and link category goals to provide some structure to your advanced clock. If we would say yes right now, it would fill the clock with an hour's worth of music with a jingle or a link every second item or every 2 items. I'm going to say no because I want to create an empty advanced clock to show you how to build one from scratch.
Myriad version 5.25 introduced a brand new advanced clock window, so the video has been updated to reflect these changes. This is the advanced clock window. Let's start by giving our advanced clock a name. We also have to choose whether it is a simple or an advanced clock. As you can see, we've already selected advanced clock here. We also have to select the schedule mode, whether it's live assist or auto fade. So as with the simple clock, live assist should be used for any clocks that are going to be presented by live presenters, and auto fade should be used for any clocks that are going to be automated by Myriad. In this case, let's make a live show, so let's choose live assist. The clock item window allows you to build your clock by dragging clock items from the left hand side into the main window here. You can expand the tree to see separate categories for any items within here. So let's build a clock. Let's say we were starting with a link. So I'm going to drag a link across, drop it into the window there. And then I may put a couple of songs in, maybe another link, then an advert break, a couple more songs, maybe a social post. Continue to build up your clock until you have all the items you need to cover the show that you're trying to build. We'll be covering the individual log items in more detail in a short while, so don't worry about that for now. We've got the basic outline of the beginning of our clock here, but we are lacking a great deal of detail because we have a link and then a song and then another song and another link and an advert break, etc. But we need to tell Myriad Schedule a little bit more about what to do. Now, the simple thing to do here is to just double click on an item and it will allow us to set the basic settings for that item. So if I double click on a link, you can see in here I can choose to use the goals, which are similar. We'll cover those in a second, but they are the same sort of goals as we used on a simple clock. or we can specify an exact category to use. So if I want to use a promo, I can select promo. I can even specify an exact media item to use as well. So if I know that the link I want to play at the beginning of my show is at media ID number 15, I can absolutely put that in and it will play that. You can see it's changed it. It's showing you exactly which media item it's going to use. I'm going to switch this one back to be a station ID. Same thing for songs. You can double click on the song and you can choose the category, or you can allow it to use it based on the category goals. You can also set whether items can be faded and also whether items can be dropped from within this window. You also probably noticed that you can set the categories using a drop down on here as well, which is often a lot easier and quicker way of doing it, because you can kind of go through the categories here and choose which categories you want to. You'll also notice on my system here, I have a whole bunch of other settings that I could use. Now this is because I have Myriad Schedule Plus enabled on my system. So Myriad Schedule Standard, you would have category, and you would also have must-have tags. So you'd have the ability to specify which tags an item should have in the clock, and also whether they were droppable, fadeable, locked, and also the chain type. So whether it's a red square for a stop or a green circle for automatically segue into the next item. But unless you have Schedule Plus enabled, you won't see the type, gender, era, or the must not have tag columns. These are only enabled if you have Myriad Schedule Plus. But as you would expect, if you do have Myriad Schedule Plus enabled, you can specify the types, the genders, the eras, and also which category or which tags should not be included. So Myriad Schedule Plus will just have categories, tags, and some settings at the end about whether you can drop it, fade it, lock it, and also what to do at the end of that item. Schedule Plus adds in a few more columns to allow you to specify more tightly. So let's have a quick set of a few of these. So let's say we wanted this one to be a classics type, and we wanted it to be a female gender. You can set the era if you wish, and you can also, if I scroll along to the tags, we can set which tags we want. So we could say this has to be a love song, and we can also set which tags we don't want. So we could say this has to be a love song, but it cannot be an hour opener. Sorry. So that's how you would set the individual items in the clock. Now I just want to also explain about the use goals section here, because obviously this first song here I've specified the pop category, and the second one I've specified the gold category, but on this song here I've said use goals. So when you set use goals as the category, Myriad Schedule will then defer to the song category goals tab, which is here, which is very similar to the thing we were looking at a few seconds ago in the simple clock. So in here you specify which categories we should use. So if I zero all these out and then say I want some pop and a little bit of gold, and let's say we were going to have a little bit of rock as well. So whenever Myriad Schedule comes across a song that says use goals as the category, it will then refer back to this and pick categories based on the proportion of music through the hour to reflect the goals on the song category goals tab. It will also take into account specified categories. So I've specified a pop and a gold already in this hour. So let's say that overall there was going to be 10 songs in the hour, and we set our category goals so that 60% of them would be pop and 40% would be gold. Then obviously that would be 6 songs and 4 songs. Because we've already used one song of pop and one song of gold up, then that would then be adjusted and taken into account when it's working that out. So overall, across your hour, the category goals will be observed. Of course, if you set the category goals like this, but then go through and set every single category to be funk, then it will play all funk, because the category that you put in here is the default. It is what will be used in that for that item. So even if the song categories don't have that category enabled, or if it's asking for something different, if you specify the category in the clock, that is what Myriad Schedule will use when it's picking the songs for that slot in the clock. Let's take a closer look at all the different clock items available within the advanced clock. We've already seen how you can add songs to a category by pulling a song across from the left-hand tree view into there, and how you can go into a particular category as well. So if I want to add a dance category song, I can drag that across. You can see the category is automatically set to dance. You can actually even dial into the actual category itself. So if you wanted to add a specific song, you could do so, and you can see Gorillas has been added to my clock there. Likelihood is I wouldn't want to do that, so I'm going to take that out. Where you would maybe want to do that is when you're adding a links, which can be done exactly the same. So you can go into links and you can choose to add a category, or you might go into the category and actually choose a specific. So if I want to add this national DAB ID, I can do that. Obviously, I've got a link here I don't need, so I'm just going to right click and delete that. News items are items that are defined as news on the media wall. If you click on the news item link there, then you can type in the specific ID of the news item. So if my news item is at number 500, I can just put that in there and that would then play that. A basic media item is just exactly that. It is a piece of a media item off of the media wall. So you can drag a media item in, you can click on media to type in, and you can browse if you wish to select the media item you want to do. So a media item doesn't care whether it's a song, a link, jingle, advert, whatever. It just puts in whatever media item you want to. Now this is commonly used for things like news that might change on an hourly basis. So for example, you may be taking news from an external source, like a news provider such as Radio News Hub, IRN, or Future Story News, and they may be delivering you new content every hour or every half hour, however often it is. So typically the way you would do that is you would specify a media item. Let's say it's going to be media item 1500, and let's choose one that's empty at the moment. So let's do for 1350. So you can see media item number 1350 is going to be played at this position in the clock. So whatever is in 1350 will be what is played. So typically you would actually put this at the top of the hour after maybe a news in jingle, and then you would actually update the contents of media item 1350 each hour with the latest news. Now that may be that your news team records that into there, or it may be that auto importer just grabs the file from whatever folder it's been sent to and imports it into Myriad to replace the previous hour's news. Next we have an auto hook. Each one of these items instantly, most of them have their own settings. So if you click on them, you can view the settings. So we've kind of looked at the auto hooks before in the when we look at the simple clock. So in this auto hook, you can specify how many media items to play. Which media item to play at the beginning of the auto hook. So this might be a jingle that says coming up in the next 30 minutes. And then you can specify a media item to play in between each of the hooks. So that's usually a piece of production, maybe a burst of static or something like that. And then you can specify the media item to play at the end of your auto hook. So that might be your out jingle. You can specify how many items should be hooked. So here we currently set to 3, which means it'll pick 3 songs that and extract the hooks from them for this auto hook. And you can also say how many hours ahead. So if your auto hook is at the beginning of your 2-hour show and you want to say coming up on the show today, and you want it to play say 5 items from the next 2 hours, you can absolutely do that. And you can also choose the item selection method. So currently it's set to next X items. So in this case, it's going to play the next 5 items that have hooks. But if I was trying to do a kind of a promo of what's coming up over the next 2 hours, I probably would choose random X items. So this auto hook here, if I just put a next 30 minutes and I just put a jingle at the end here. So it's going to play media item number 1, which is a jingle that says in the next 30 minutes you'll hear, and then it's going to play 5 hooks randomly selected from the next 2 hours, and at the end of that it's going to play media item number 13, which is a jingle. And finally, you can specify a media item to play if no songs in the specified time actually have hooks. So if you happen to pick an hour that doesn't have any songs with hooks defined, please play this media item, and then you type in the media item you want it to play. So that's an auto hook. Hardware event. This is a defined hardware event, so you can specify a line number, whether to set, clear, flash, or pulse. This is typically used for switching on external devices or other external features, usually coupled with a hardware card, although you can use virtual hardware system inside of Myriad 5 as well. So if what you're doing is turning on something on a smart sign, or indeed interfacing with any of the mixing desks that are compatible with the Myriad hardware service, so that's any AEQ mixers, most of the DNR mixers, and also our own SRM, of course, then you can use virtual hardware, but you can define those hardware elements inside your clock if you wish. Next, we have a social post. Social posts allow Myriad to post a slug of text onto both Facebook and Twitter, or one or the other. So if you only want to post to Facebook, or if you only want to post to Twitter, or obviously you can post to both, you type your text in there, and that is what will get posted on that social media. You can also add in file tags and also OCP tags. Now, file tags can be used to select a file from a social folder, which is a sub of the main Myriad data folder, and then the contents of that folder will be substituted in there. So if I had one set up, I could just select it in here and it would be added in. Now that's a really handy way of posting, say, the weather on social media, because you can have a text file that someone can paste the new weather into each day without having to change the actual item inside of Myriad itself. And then finally, you can insert some OCP tags. Now these are special tags that allows the system to switch the tag for the information. So, for example, there are loads of OCP tags you could use, but one good example might be OCP_now_artists, because then you could say, coming up, we've got a song by, and then use that tag, and it would actually take the now, or you could say the OCP_next_artists, and that would then display the title, the name of the artist to be played next. Okay, now we're moving on to the times. We have 3 different types of times in Myriad Schedule. We have absolute times. Now these are times that are absolute, as the name suggests, and that means that Myriad will either back time to get to this time or wait for this time, depending on whether there's content, more content that's needed before the time, or whether there is less content that is before the time. Essentially, Myriad will press the go button at the time that you specify. So it doesn't really matter, whether, if you're in auto fade mode, certainly if you've got more stuff before this time, Myriad will then back time to that time event. You could then also do a second absolute time directly afterwards, which is 3 minutes later, and the system would wait for that. So that would be commonly how you might back time to the top or halfway through an hour, then wait for 3 minutes while you take an external news feed or something like that. Now, one thing that often confuses people when they're setting the time is you don't put the hour. Myriad will automatically add the hour, because of course this clock may be used on multiple hours, so you don't put the actual hour, you just put the minutes, the seconds, and the hundredths. So you can see, if I wanted this one to be half past, I'd say 30 minutes, 3,000 minutes, 30 minutes, 0 seconds, and 0 hundredths. And then, okay, so you can see everything. This absolute time will execute at half past the hour. That means if Myriad has to backtime stuff to get there, it will do, or if it has to autofill, it will do. But only if we're in auto fade mode. In live mode, it won't fill or run to time. However, it will wait for an absolute time even in live mode. So absolute times are times, sometimes referred to as hard times in other systems, and they will happen at the exact time you specify. You may prefer to use a soft time. So a soft time is very similar to an absolute time, except for a soft time can be set to get to close to the target time, but not necessarily exactly on the target time. So let's say I set this one to 30 minutes as well, but I'm also allowing it to arrive early by up to 1 minute and 30 seconds. Now what that means is if the content before this soft time is up to 28 minutes and 30 seconds, if it's greater than 28 minutes and 30 seconds, but less than half than 30 minutes, then it will actually allow that soft time to occur up to a minute and a half before the target time of half past. So effectively what will happen is you'll get to the soft time up to a minute and a half early. If, however, the content before the soft time goes over the half past, a soft time allows it to go one item over. So let's say there's a song halfway through when the time gets to half past. If it's an absolute time, Myriad would have chopped that time off, or back timed, or shrunk time shrunk the audio to get to half past. If you're using a soft time, Myriad will be playing that track at half past and allow that track to finish before it moves on to the next item. So effectively, a soft time gets you to within one song or one item of the target time. Then next we've got a reset time, which I'll pop in here. A reset time is really only used for talk shows or other things where you have external events happening. So what happens is, let's say we had a soft time, which we've got here for 23 minutes past. But let's say at 23 minutes past, we're planning a talk segment where we're going to talk for 15 minutes to a guest. So in that case, it would be, we would change this one to be, say, 38 minutes past. So what this does is it tells the system now that we are planning on resetting the time at 38 minutes past. And so anything that goes below that will start at 38 minutes past. So you can see your timing is now correct in terms of planning your shows and for voice tracking and stuff, because we are telling the system to take into account that extra 15 minutes between this soft time marker at 23 minutes past and the reset time marker at 38 minutes past. You can insert scripts, so I can drag a script in there. You can type a script into here, and that will then be accessible inside the log. Finally, in here we've got split groups and split advert breaks. Now these are only used if you're using Myriad Network SE, and allows you to have either split jingles or split adverts, but we won't be covering that in today's video. And the last thing we see here is we have clocks. Now this allows you to take a clock and put it inside a clock. Now why you would do that initially probably seems fairly crazy, but the reason you would do it is a clock doesn't have to be a full like a full 1 hour clock. It could just be a sequence of 3 or 4 things. So for example, you could create a top of hour clock which has your news sequence and your sponsorship tags on there, and then have that as the first item in all your other clocks. And then when your news or sponsorship tag changes, you just change it in one place and it will trickle or cascade down into all the other clocks. And as I've been going through this, I realised I also missed out adverts, so let's pop that in as well. So adverts, you can put your advert breaks in where you need them to be. And if you're using an external advert scheduling system, you need to put a time reference in. So I'm going to call this one the quarter past advert break. And it will then, in your external or third-party advert scheduling system, you also need to give it a 15-minute past break reference, and then the system knows which adverts to put into which advert breaks. If you're using Myriad, Advert Manager SE, then you don't need to specify the time, but you may want to specify which category of adverts you want. So you could have a top of hour category within your adverts, which could be used for pushing adverts into the first advert break in the hour. Okay, so that's the available items within your clock. Next, we need to know how to take this clock and put it actually into a useful hour in your schedule. And to do that, we'll be looking at the clock assignment grid. But before we do that, let's actually create a useful log. So what we can do is we can select everything and hit delete, clear everything off, and let's actually build a log that we can actually use. So let's start off with a jingle, and let's put it in our top of our promo as our thing. Then we're going to put in, I'm going to start off the hour with an A-list song, and then I'm just going to put a use goals song, 2 of those, and then I'm going to put in a link, and I'm going to make that one a station ID. Then I'm going to put my first ever break, and I'll give this one call this one the 10 past break. So that's my first ever break done. So I've got 3 songs, a link. Let's do a couple more songs, and then we'll do a social post. Put that in and go. Hello everyone. Put that on Twitter and Facebook. Then once I've done that, I'm going to add in I just put a link in next, and then another song, and we carry on building the hour up like this. I might choose to specify some of the categories for some of the songs in the hour, and I may leave others as using goals. We better set some goals as well, so make sure we've got the pop and the gold, and let's pull a bit of rock in there as well. Remember to also do the same thing on links, so that if we don't specify any link categories, then like this one here where it says use goals, it will actually use the link category goals tab there. And so we can carry on like that. I'm just going to add in another link and add in another break, and then another song, another 2 songs. That'll take me to half past. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select all of these, do copy, and then paste them in, so that I actually have repeated it. Obviously, I no longer want that one to be the top of our promo, so I'm just going to say change that to be a station ID, change my ever break, this one to be 40, and this one to be 55. I also forgot to set a advert reference on this one, so we'll call this one's 25. And that's my clock now complete. So next we need to actually assign this to something useful in the hour using the clock assignment grid. As we've already discussed, a clock is a plan for a 1-hour segment of show, but exactly where that clock should be used is determined by its position in the clock assignment grid. Here we can see the clock assignment grid, and it's very simply a grid of 24 hours a day or 7 days a week. So it covers every single hour of the day, and inside the slots is the clock that will be used to fill that particular hour. So you can see here currently the advert examples clock is being used to fill every hour on Monday. But let's say we wanted to change the 10 o'clock in the evening hour to use the dance clock that we just created a few moments ago. We can pick it up and we can just drag it onto the 10 o'clock hour here, and we can see the dance show is in there. Now let's say that dance show is actually a 2-hour show. Well, that's okay, we just put the clock in twice. Because the clock doesn't specifically say what content, just the plan for what content to go in, it's okay to use the same clock multiple times in your clock assignment grid. There are several ways of doing this. As we've already seen, you can drag any clock on the left hand side to any slot on the clock assignment grid, but you can also select multiple things. So let's say we wanted to set lots of hours to the same thing. We can use the mouse to just drag and select, and what we can actually do is we can choose our clock on the left hand side here. So let's say we wanted to make this Billy's show, and if you click on the set to selected clock button here, it will change everything that you selected to the clock that is highlighted on the left. You can select entire days, or you can select hours across days, or even multiple hours across days by holding down the shift button and clicking on the column or row headers. You can also remove from there. So if you have, you can see we've got empty. If you have prompt, if you leave something as prompt, then the system will actually stop and ask which clock to use when it comes to schedule that particular hour. But it's not a good idea to do that, because if Myriad needs to automatically fill for whatever reason, you have prompt hours in, then the system will stop scheduling and sit there and wait for you to tell it what to put into those hours. Sometimes you need blank clocks, so you can, but the best way to do them is to actually create a advanced clock with nothing in it called blank, and then put that in any blank hours you need inside of the clock assignment grid. So I'm going to go ahead and create a typical clock assignment grid here. I'm going to use up till 7 a.m. across the day. I'm just going to use the general clock, which is kind of an automation clock, and then I'm going to say, okay, well, put Billy's show till 1 o'clock every day, so set there, and then we're going to do something different, pop only maybe in those ones, and then I'm just going to change the evening shows to be all rock. You can see I've got different setup for the weekend, but of course this clock assignment grid should reflect your station schedule. And what happens is when it gets to Sunday night, it will then go back to Monday morning and repeat the clocks, not the content, of course. The content is picked fresh for every single hour. It's just that the clock it's used to pick the content, the rules and the categories that are allowed will be reused using the clock that's in that hour. So if you need to change the clock assignment from one week to the next, what you would need to do is schedule that first week, then change the clock assignment, then schedule the second week. Okay, we've got a couple of other options here. You can clear all, which will get rid of everything. You can fill all empties. So one of the things you could do is if you've put in your key shows and then you just want to fill the rest of the empty hours with a generic simple clock, you could do so. You also have the option to import or export clock assignment grids. So you may create a special clock assignment grids for the week leading up to Christmas, for example, and then save it, export it, and then you can use it again next year. We've already seen how you can set to selected clock and also how to remove stuff. The only other thing in here is the import. Now this is usually only used once, and this is for anyone who is coming from AutoTrack SE or AutoTrack Pro SE, and this allows you to import either the clocks and assignments, the default global rules, or the import categories, styles, names, etc. So you can choose which content you want to bring in from AutoTrack Pro into Myriad Schedule. And that's about it for clock assignments. Next, we're going to have a look at how we can easily duplicate clocks. Earlier, we created a simple clock that only played dance music. So let's look how we could easily duplicate that and then change a couple of settings to make it a different a clock for a different genre of music. The easiest way to do that is click on the item, and you can either right click and copy this clock, or if you go to the more options drop down, you can choose create copy of selected clock. So I'm going to do that, and here you can see copy of dance, but I'm going to rename this one to be let's call this one blues. I want to keep all the rest of the information the same, still a simple clock, still auto fade, still playing media item number 7, but I don't want it to just play dance music now. I want it to only play blues music. So I go along to my blues fader or my blues weightings slider, and I turn that up to 100%. But with only 7 songs in the system, this will not really work. As we saw earlier, we can adjust the rules for the blues. So let's have a quick look. We can see if we use these specific rules, we can adjust the title and artist separation, but also we can allow these rules to be broken. So even if we only have 7 blues songs, if we have a title separation of 2 hours and artist separation of 1 hour, but we allow these rules to be broken, if the system runs out of blues music, it will reuse music, breaking these rules as required. Now, in a real radio station, you wouldn't do that. You would just not try and schedule an hour's worth of content with 7 blues songs on your system. You'd add a few more songs. Okay, so that's my blues song, clock created. All that would be left to do would be to then take my blues and assign it to whatever hours of the week I wanted to actually play blues music. So let's put it in Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. One final thing to note is, as well as creating copies of clocks from the More Options tab or More Options drop down, you can also import clocks from a file or export clocks from a file. So you can see here we've got a large amount of clocks here. What you might do is actually export clocks as files, and then you could delete them from here and then import them if you need to. So if you create a whole new set of clocks, no need to keep all of your old clocks hanging around. You could just export them, save them on a file somewhere, and then import them should you need them.
Now that Myriad Schedule is fully set up, let's quickly review how you actually schedule into the log. We covered this in detail when we were looking at the log, so we're just going to briefly go for it. First and simplest way is if you are in an hour that does not currently have anything scheduled, such as these hours here. If you click on the Fill This Hour button, it will use Myriad Schedule to fill the hour based on the clocks you created for that hour. So if we were to go to the 8 o'clock hour tomorrow, we know it's going to be rock music, so let's give it a try. All rock music, great. If you want to schedule more than an hour, you can click on the Hour Import tab and check and click on Schedule Import Log. You can then say which hours you do. So if we were to do from midnight to 23:59 for the 24th of April, okay, the system will actually schedule around anything that's already in the log. So the 8 o'clock hour and the 2 o'clock hour we already scheduled a few moments ago will remain in place. The 9 o'clock hour will of course all be pop music. The final situation where Myriad Schedule will be used is if we are in a live show. And the system is in auto fade mode. If we don't have enough content to cover the hour, the system will use Myriad Schedule to determine which music should be added in. So as we're removing items from here, the system is just adding more items onto the end to ensure that our overrun is a 0, and is using the clocks assigned for this hour to decide what music should be added in to make up the shortfall.
It is also worth mentioning that Myriad can be set to automatically schedule itself ahead so that you don't actually have to manually do any scheduling. The system will by default always schedule the next hour if the next hour is empty, but you can adjust that setting so that the system will actually schedule X many hours ahead or several days ahead depending on what you want to do. To get to those settings, go to the station menu and then station settings, and then we want to be on the scheduler tab. And then the top section here, automatic schedule management. This is the bit that we're interested in. So you can see the default is if to automatically schedule if the log runs out, i.e. if the system has detected that it's about to finish an hour and the next hour has not got anything scheduled, it will go ahead and fill that. But let's see what other options we have. We can choose never, even in an emergency, if you don't ever want Myriad to schedule anything. You can schedule for the next hour, so that will always maintain at least 1 hour ahead of current time. That's useful for automation systems. Up to the next full day, so that will keep a full 24 hours ahead all the time. Up to the next full 7 days, so that will keep 7 rolling days. Or you can choose a custom number in which case you can choose how many days ahead. You could also set the time when the system checks, so the default is 40 minutes past the hour, so at 40 minutes past each hour the system checks to see should it be doing any scheduling, and if it does need to do some scheduling it does it then. You can choose whether the advert logs should be merged in at the same time or whether they are done at the with each hour. So if your advert logs change regularly, then you may choose this to be it should be done just at the last minute, just before it needs it. And finally, we have a setting for automatically removing log items in this section, which means that you currently we're storing 90 days worth of logs, which means we could scroll back 90 days and see what was scheduled. So by changing this, for example, for the next 7 days, it means that you no longer have to schedule anything manually. The system will always schedule, or always have 7 full days ahead from whatever time you're looking at. So that's how you would set up Myriad to automatically schedule ahead.
Let's review what we've covered in this video. We started off talking about Myriad Schedule, what it is and how it will help your station. We then talked about categories, how to create them and how to assign them to media items. Next we looked at rules, how they are used in Myriad Schedule and how to apply them. We covered simple clocks and also spent a fair bit of time talking about advanced clocks and how to use them to structure your shows. We looked at how clocks are assigned to certain hours of the day, and finally how Myriad Schedule is used to schedule content into the log. That's it for this video. In the next video, we'll be finishing things off with some settings as well as some other things we haven't covered so far.